Welcome, everybody, to the launch of the digital publication Dialogues towards Decolonizing Music and Dance Studies. The book is finally finished. It has been a long journey, but it has also been an incredibly heartwarming experience for Marsha and I to work with all the presenters of the ICTM Dialogues and with each other during the last 1.5 years. As a post-colonial and a member of the Chinese minority in Malaysia, I have experienced racism at home as well as overseas. As a result, I have consciously struggled to create spaces for inclusivity and equality through my research, writing, and advocacy work. It has been very important for me to allow the people I work with to speak using their own languages and in their own terms. At the international level, the ICTM Dialogues has been a critical project towards this end. The online sessions provided a platform for academics, students, culture activists, and Indigenous heritage bearers from around the globe to share the different perspectives and approaches on how to decolonize music and dance studies in different languages. Many Indigenous tradition bearers and knowledge holders, especially those from Latin America and Africa, have commented that the opportunity to present at the ICTM Dialogues has given them confidence to voice their opinions in academic settings. Equally significant, the ICTM Dialogues has promoted new transnational conversations and collaborations between groups and individuals. Additional outcomes include the publication of essays by some scholars from the Global South in high-impact international journals, in addition to the current digital book, as well as direct access for knowledge holders to collections of Indigenous music in the European Sound Archive that was close to them prior to the dialogues. The publication is also decolonial as it highlights alternative ways of presentation and publication using videos, images, and visualizations. This differs from the standard academic writing and is more accessible to non-academics. The introduction highlights interactive visualizations for assessing the main themes, ranging from horizontal collaboration, national and cultural sovereignty, new ways of knowing, and alternative pedagogy, as well as sessions using multiple languages. There is an interactive map that shows the sites related to each session. Can I now call on Marsha to say a few words?
Thank you, Soibeng, and thank you everyone for joining us today. Gwe, hello from Unama'ki, part of Mi'kmaq, the unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. I'm a settler on this land. My ancestors are from the land today known as Ukraine. This territory of Unama'ki is covered by the Treaties of Peace and Friendship, which Mi'kmaq and Wolostoq people first signed with the British Crown in 1725. These treaties recognized Mi'kmaq and Wolostoq title and established rules for what was to be an ongoing relationship between nations. I commit my thoughts and actions in this work that we are all doing together today in support of meaningful reconciliation and decolonization through respectful relationships with Mi'kmaq people. I also honor the knowledge and experiences and ancestors of all the Indigenous leaders and colleagues and friends with us here today, so many of whom have worked with us and taught us and helped us to come together on this path toward decolonizing music and dance studies. The Mi'kmaq colleagues with whom I work here in Unama'ki have told me that the Dialogues publication that we're launching today and all of our efforts toward decolonization more generally are important means of helping to make possible good lives for our Indigenous colleagues, families, and communities. This work we're doing helps to make good lives for many people today and for many generations. We're working together to help make possible a future built through mutual care and support, where all of us diverse peoples live and work among and with one another with respect and care, peace, and well-being. With these aims in mind, Sui Beng and I, together with many others, developed the Multifaceted Dialogues project, of which the ICTM Dialogues are but one part. A strong team of people worked with us to submit a grant application to the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council of Canada, known as SSHRC by its acronym. This includes Sylvia Citro, Christian Onyeji, Sher Etan, as well as Tomie Han, Michael Frischkopf, Julia Bile, Michael McDonald, and Megan Forsyth. These were members of the ICTM Dialogues Committee and the Canadian Society for Traditional Music, or CSTM, and of course, Tomie Han is president of SEM. So people from all of these societies and from around the world came together in this initiative. We're grateful to have been granted funding from SSHRC. It made possible many learning and knowledge exchange opportunities, as well as tangible outcomes, including a series of events and activities hosted in Canada at the Centre for Sound Communities, which I serve as director. These various initiatives include a translations component in which more than 20 emerging scholars from around the world participated, resulting in translations of ICTM's Statement on Decolonization that you can now find online at ictmusic.org. As well, the broader project supported a workshop on disrupting white supremacy in the academy, led by Dylan Robinson, and a series of workshops on anti-racist pedagogies curated by Megan Forsyth and me in consultation with several other colleagues, including Amira Nimji, Toshio Oki, Hadi Milan Lu, and Daniel Akira Stadnicki. You can view the recordings of these workshops on the Center for Sound Communities YouTube channel at soundcommunities.org. Daniel Akira Stadnicki served as the coordinator of the broader project, and he was helped in his coordination and communication efforts by others, including Mark Parcelelo, Toshio Oki, Eric Escudero, Kat Dancer, Jeremy Strachan, and Nassim Ahmadian. Expanding on the anti-racist pedagogies workshops, Megan Forsyth and I are co-editing a special journal issue. It will be published next year in Music Cultures, the flagship publication of the CSTM. With the many names of the many people already mentioned, you begin to get a sense of the breadth of this international project and the many, many people who made it all possible. We are very grateful to everyone. And already I miss our regular communications. Particularly through the pandemic, staying connected through this project has meant a great deal to me. I've appreciated the compassion, the earnestness, and dedication of all of our team members. And I've learned so much, and I've been pleased to hear similar sentiments from many of them. Most of all, I will miss the enthusiastic and inspiring communications, the kindness and mentorship from Sui Beng. And I'm also very glad to say I'll be able to continue working with her on the ICTM Dialogues Committee and EB, so stay tuned for a future project. Today, we've come together to celebrate the innovative digital book publication developed from the 2021 ICTM Dialogues. As Sui Beng and I write in our introduction to this volume, the publication has benefited from ingenuity, creativity, care, hard work, and assistance of many people. We began our work with the 2021 ICTM Dialogues Committee. We thank all of the members of this committee for evaluating the proposals. Tan Sui Beng from Malaysia, Sylvia Citro from Argentina, Irene Karongo Hundalby from Solomon Islands, New Zealand, Jean Kidula from Kenya, USA, Urmimala Sarkar, India, Christian Onyeji, Nigeria, Sher Etan, Singapore and UK, Larry Fitzlaben, USA, and me from Canada. And we were also joined by Susana Sardo from Portugal and Kari Sego from Canada, the then co-chairs of the ICTM World Conference Program Committee, since the dialogues would intertwine with the Lisbon Conference. Thank you also to Carlos Yoder at the ICTM Secretariat for facilitating the dialogue Zoom sessions and editing the videos, and to Eric Escudero, PhD student at Memorial University, Newfoundland, for his technical assistance with these tasks. To Sylvia Citro and Maiko Santaella, thank you for editing Spanish translations. And to Sher Etan, thank you for uploading the videos to Bilibili until you were blocked and no longer able to continue with that. We also extend immense thanks to digital editor Crystal Chan. I'm so pleased that she was able to join us today. for her beautiful design and skillful editing and creation of this digital publication, and for her commitment and care with this project. To Elizabeth Edgerton and Humberto Piccoli, thank you for your production assistance. We also thank Digital Alliance Canada and their Atlantic Wing AceNet, who provide computing services for Canadian scholars for free. They're hosting the Dialogues videos online for the book. A very special thanks to Chris Giroux, who works with AceNet, for doing the work behind the scenes for our platform and the cloud computing that make all of this hosting possible and smoothly interoperable with the Scalar platform that hosts the rest of the book. Chris's time and expertise have been an enormous gift to all of us. We also thank the reviewers for generously sharing their time and insights and for being here with us today. You will hear from each of them in a moment. Last but not least, we extend our warmest, our heartfelt thanks to all of the ICTM Dialogues organizers and presenters and the Indigenous knowledge holders and culture bearers for sharing their rich experiences and their knowledge with us. Thank you all. In Ukrainian, we say Dziękujemy, and in Mi'kmaq, Wilaliok.
Thank you, Masha. We are honored to have 6 ICTM members who have agreed to present some comments and their thoughts about the digital publication. They are Svanibor Pettan, Beverley Diamond, Samuel Araújo, Jean Kidula, Naila, Ceribašić, and Anthony Seeger. Let me first introduce Svanibor, who is our first speaker. Svanibor Pettan is a professor of ethnomusicology at the University of Ljubljana, Slovenia. He is the current president and former Secretary General of ICTM. His newest publication, co-edited with Naila, Ceribašić, and Don Niles, is celebrating the International Council for Traditional Music, Reflections on the First 7 Decades, released in June this year. Svanibor.
Thank you, Sui Meng. So dear friends and respected colleagues, it's really a pleasure and honor to be with you on this very important day. And I would like to congratulate also like the 75th anniversary to ICTM. We were celebrating this with a cake at the symposium in Rio of the Applied Ethnomusicology Study Group. It was about 3 weeks ago, I think, less than a month in September, yeah. And I think we provided our most favorite scholarly society with 2 nice presents this year. One is the volume that Sui Meng just mentioned, and the other one is, of course, the dialogues towards decolonizing music and dance studies, which we are very much honored to be presenting today. So both publications turn the mirror towards us, encouraging critical reflections. Is our world a better place thanks to our activities, both collective and individual? Where have we succeeded? Where have we failed? What could have been done better? And what should be done today for tomorrow? Decolonization of music and dance studies is an essentially important direction. So before making any further statement, I would wish to wholeheartedly congratulate the co-editors Tan Sui Meng and Marcia Ostaszewski for their initiative, for the care of the year-long series of online panels, and last but not least, this publication, which is fabulous in so many respects, which is remarkably fresh, which is creative, innovative. Only compliments can be said to that. Thanks to all participants, all people involved in the creation of both the panels and the volume of this, for presenting the ICTM also in such a good light through these events and for the final product. I would wish to say that 2021 was a very critical year for the ICTM, and this what the 2 of you prepared with all other colleagues involved in this process was a vigorous and truly international, like regular brain food, I can say, during these COVID months. So with a vigorous and the contents, which forced us to postpone most of our usually gatherings, including our precious World Conference, several study group symposia, and also to hold the planning of colloquia and fora. So I can say without any exaggeration that it was the dialogues that truly marked the ICTM year 2021. From today's perspective, I see the ICTM Dialogues as a masterful new creation, but also as an important showcase of continuity, starting perhaps with our new statute, which replaced the outdated rules and was confirmed in 2017, followed by declaration of ethical principles and professional integrity. Then ICTM statement and activities in view of decolonization of music and dance studies, and finally the surveys, which enabled the widest membership to express their thoughts and expectations. So let me quote just one section from this declaration. So our work with others and the potential impact of our work upon others requires us to work for the benefit of those around us through the creation of new knowledge, as well as by means of direct action, engagement, and the application of knowledge. We strive not only to do no harm, but additionally to design our research, teaching, and other activities to bring benefit to those who collaborate with us in the study, research, and dissemination of music and dance and associated scholarship. End of quote. So unlike the situation from more than 2 decades ago, when a group of us led by Ursula Hemetek had to provide strong evidence to the board at the time that we envisioned study group on music and minorities, and this won't endanger somehow the ideal of dispassionate observer by politically implicated action. The clearly engaged study groups, such as, for instance, applied ethnomusicology, or for instance, music education and social inclusion, did prepare terrain for transforming ethnomusicology. And here I am, of course, just referring to the beautiful double volume edited by Beverley Diamond and Salvel Shaman Castelo Branco that came out in 2019, and with a strong thematic impact of Samuel Araújo, who is also with us today. I would like to, I love the dialogues actually from the very inception, and really appreciate the opportunity to be able to see the panels even after the real time was over. So because they were recorded and it was possible then to access it without any problems in terms of different time zones and if we were exactly busy at the time. So I saw many of them actually in that way. And I'm highly appreciative of the publication, which uses all these multimedia advantages in providing us with very precious contents. The co-editor's introduction provides the readership with rich and beautifully structured data, with inspiring and encouraging, I would say, extensions of the main themes, with many sentences deserving to be extensively quoted. I love the statistics that you provided as well, beautiful graphs that of course make sense, beautiful photo footage illustrations, and I take this opportunity, of course, to thank Crystal Chen. We heard that she was also to be thanked for all these beautifully arranged images in the publication. This is, I love also the thought-provoking Spanish translation notes by the Executive Board Committee on the subject led by Silvia Citro. And in conclusion, just not to be too long, I would say that any internationally respected society would be proud of such a publication. And of course, ICTM is not an exception in this. And thank you again to the co-editors and to all participants. So since the ICTM is all of us, and it is certainly not an imaginary remote power tower, so please accept our warmest gratitude and appreciation for your hard work and also the result, which is of the long-lasting value. So much from me for today. I look forward to hear my colleagues what they have to add. Thank you once again so much to all.
Thank you so much, Svanibor. And I have the great pleasure now of introducing Beverley Diamond, a professor emeritus at Memorial University in Canada, where she founded and directed the Research Center for the Study of Music, Media, and Place, or MMAP. We like acronyms in Canada, I think. She's best known for her research on gender issues, Canadian historiography, and Indigenous music cultures. Her latest book, On Record, Audio Recording Mediation and Citizenship in Newfoundland and Labrador, published in 2021, explores media production by both settler and Indigenous musicians. Beverley.
Thank you so much, Marcia. Of course, I want to add further congratulations to Tansui Benga and Marcia Ostaszewski, the organizers and the participants in the dialogues. I truly think the dialogues may be the most significant initiative that we've seen in ethnomusicology this far. And it's really a wonderful event and a wonderful publication. I'd like to take a few minutes to identify what seemed to me to be some of the really significant themes in the dialogues. And then I'll take the last few minutes to suggest some topics that might be further considered for the dialogue's second season, which I truly hope will take place. So first of all, some high points. I was hugely impressed by the representation of the Global South. 8 sessions concern Latin America, 7 concern Africa, some from Southeast Asia as well. Second, by the strong representation of issues relating to dance. Maybe this is an obvious thing, but we know very well that dance is often separated from music or ignored in educational institutions, even though sound and movement are so connected culturally. I was impressed by the nuances that participants brought to discussions of decoloniality, or more accurately, quote, shades of decoloniality, as Srirata Paul articulated. I appreciated the insights of many participants who described struggles within their own institutions or outside the university, within their own communities. Many, of course, spoke to class distinctions and lingering inequalities relating to gender. I also was impressed by the use of multiple languages. That's been mentioned already. Critiques of the preponderance of the English language were significant. I point out that this issue has gotten worse, not better, within academic societies. For instance, ICTM board meetings and conferences, when I first attended them, I'm giving my age away here, were multilingual, albeit English, French, and German. Making publications multilingual would require some changes, editorial teams probably rather than individuals. And these teams, I think, would continue conversations started in the dialogues, and that would be a healthy move. I was hugely impressed by imaginative approaches to curricular development and new modes of cooperative teaching. And I was also impressed by the call to rethink how research is evaluated by potential publishers and how these evaluation criteria may underlie negative decisions and exclusions. So, what could Dialogues 2 continue or expand upon after this remarkable first year? Dialogues 1 mostly focused on ethnic groups with long histories in specific places. Dialogues 2 could feature more attention to the disruptions and forced movement of people, the loss of place, and ways to adapt. Now, there were some exceptions this past year, such as Little by Little, the Bird Makes Its Nest, concerning Haitian migration to Brazil. Dialogues 2 could further problematize the reliance on verbal communication, as, for instance, the South African Cosmopolitan Collective or the Multi-Logos dance presenters did this past year. To address the problems of English only in thought and writing, with its, quote, vestiges of white supremacy, Dialogue 2 might further consider the strengths and weaknesses of different languages and the impossibility of translating without loss. I think we're all well aware of that, but we don't actually articulate the strengths and weaknesses of different languages very often. In my own work, I'm always struck by the fact that Inuktitut is always relational. Verbs indicate both subject and object. I can't say I hear, but only that I hear you or them or it or whatever. I was talking some time ago to Haudenosaunee elder Hubert Buck, who once characterized English as good for practical things, but not feelingful. His Cayuga language, he explained, carried history in every utterance. So these sorts of conversations about what languages can do and what they don't do would be very helpful, I think. Dialogues, too, might further the discussion of how we might tell our stories in new ways, responding to the observation made by the dialogue on embracing a decentered approach to the borderlands of ethnomusicology that identified the vestiges of white supremacy, quote, in the way that stories are clipped, sutured, rationalized, translated, and ordered, end quote. Editors have recently published some new styles of writing lately, such as Ama Aduonum's article in Ethnomusicology in 2021. Perhaps special issues of the ICTM could follow suit and draw attention to various styles of writing, presentation, and storying the work we do. And of course, the Dialogues volume itself already presents a wonderful model of that. Might consider what I sometimes refer to as the re-words and the D-words. Remember, renew, repeat, recover, reflect, revitalize, recognize, deconstruction, decolonial, you get the idea. These have become repeated in many, many academic studies by both Indigenous and non-Indigenous scholars for good reason. They created an important discussion about the legacies of colonialism in the present. But I wonder if they have locked us into always thinking of a pervasive past, and if it makes it difficult to think about a creative and fair future. As Painting Ecuador Anew argued, local epistemologies may be more apt to animate a future. That's probably the most controversial thing that I've got to say, but I'd love to know your thoughts on it. Dialogues, too, could further reflect on the problems that relate to what is seen as normal, often in ways of knowing by insiders, but representations by outsiders. Terminologies that embed colonial ontologies, whole genres of performance that are not supported by nation states, archival collections that communities have not been able to access. These are some of the normal problems. Related to these issues are histories of not hearing, failures to pay attention. We may need more studies of audiences, why they listen, how they listen, to whom they listen, with the most care and concern. Dialogues, too, could continue to question the notion that there is such a thing as canonical ethnomusicology, perhaps with particular regard for gender. If, for instance, women's advice and knowledge, given priority by Ecuador's Sinchi Warmicuna and several other speakers in the dialogues, had been given full attention and respect in every context, would we know the music cultures of the world differently? Dialogue, too, could expand the discussion of music and resistance. That's an obvious one. Now, just in conclusion, toward a future, what should we dismantle? What should we invent anew? What would be the implications of dismantling disciplinary boundaries? This year's dialogues already suggest alternatives such as an ethnomusicology of urgency. How can we get out of school more often, as advocated so long by the PAR groups in Rio, and take pedagogical actions outside the academy? Teaching outside in the wilderness or in urban spaces is already used by many Indigenous teachers and professors from whom we could learn. To get beyond the plague of binaries, researchers researched academy, non-academy, center, periphery, privileged, underprivileged, global, local, center, margins. How best might we challenge what is suggested by the COPI 1 dialogue about privilege being weaponized? How might we rethink power? What does sovereign mean in different contexts? Is it power over or taking responsibility for oneself, one's family, one's other connections, including the land. And how patient must we be? That's the end.
Thank you so much, Bev, for all the recommendations. I think we will keep the questions for the end. Let's hear all the speakers first, yeah. Our next speaker is Samuel Araújo, who is a professor of ethnomusicology at the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro and first vice president of the Society for Ethnomusicology. His most recent publication is Samba, Sambistas and Society, an essay in ethnomusicology, published in 2021 by the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro Press. Samuel has been actively decolonizing research in Brazil. Over to you, Samuel.
Thank you very much, Suzanne. Since this is also about social inclusion, I will address first the visually impaired and make a self-description of myself. I'm a white man, 1 meter and 83 centimeters high. I'm bald. I use a blue glass, and I'm wearing a t-shirt, a gray t-shirt, with what I call a gentle jaguar by indigenous artist Denilson Vanilla. He's a very well-known across the world indigenous artist from Brazil. And I'd like first to say that I'm really honored to be here among the speakers who will bring the first provoking questions to mobilize our debate. And I'd like to thank, in particular, Sui and Marcia for putting together this series and also this publication. Both Eric and Carlos for handling technical matters of the series itself, and also to everyone involved, the scientific committee, the editorial committee, and that put together this beautiful and quite innovative publication. As I made of the ICTM Dialogues 2021 series, the empirical topic of my presentation at ICTM, I will be very at the ICTM World Conference. I will be very repetitive, but I think this will help us to think about what directions we might take from now on. I attempted to either watch in real time the sessions or watch their respective videos afterwards, but I must admit I've only covered about half of the sessions. Nevertheless, even in such a limited sample, several issues of importance to my introductory question arose. My question is, are we really transforming or just reforming music and dance studies? This is a concern of mine that I think perhaps might move the ICTM to a second conference, to a second dialogue series. The questions I would highlight now, they are not everything that caught my attention, but a good sample of the issues that caught my attention in the sessions that I watched. One is the modes of collaboration between university-trained music and dance scholars and their diverse collaborations, resulting in strategies such as opening up extended space to interlocutors, personal statements, including description and explanation and/or theorization, plus acknowledging different intellectual trajectories within and beyond academic training. Two, Uses of language, this was already pointed out by both Bev and Svanibor. Uses of languages other than the ones spoken as lingua franca in given academic traditions, that is, admitted as lingua franca by dominant groups. 3, collaborations across local, regional, and continental situations. 4, translation as well as mistranslation potentials, for instance, the expansion of conceptual universe and forms of problematizing music and dance studies. I think mistranslations can bring also some interesting potentials, and I agree with Bev that we should reflect on this. 5, decentering the value of lingocentrism as surrogate of logocentrism in favor of a balance with non-lingocentric reflexive praxis, something that the publication itself emphasizes. 6, questioning ongoing standard criteria for the evaluation of academic work, such as publication impact indexes, often underestimating the public impact on, for instance, public service, policymaking, etc. 7, changing curricula as a way of amplifying the public resonance of decolonial modes of not only thinking, but I'm sorry, I read it again. Changing curricula as a way of amplifying the public resonance of decolonial modes of not only thinking of, but also practicing music and dance. And 8, contemplating creativity within tradition instead of a dichotomy between creativity against tradition. These are just a small sample of issues that caught my attention. I would refer, before finishing here, to an idea that is very dear to me, which was put forward by political philosopher Nancy Fraser. The idea of a global public sphere where politics of representation, social environmental justice, and of welfare distribution are played out nowadays, according to Nancy Fraser. Under such a global political configuration, the public interest shall be better represented by institutions such as the ICTM, I suggest, institutions able to reflect upon the implications of such a global public sphere, able to congregate relevant interlocutors to think it over and intervene in this debate in a way conducive to more balanced ways of planetary conviviality. And I use here this term conviviality in the sense advanced in the 1970s by Ivan Illich, an Austrian-born Latin American. Yes, he worked most of his life in Puerto Rico and Mexico, but was born in Vienna. He was a theologian. His academic backgrounds were in theology. And he was one of the main persons responsible for the diffusion of Paulo Freire's work, right? I saw Paulo Freire mentioned several times in the several sessions that I attended, with several sessions which I represented in the book. And Ivan Illich was the first person outside Brazil responsible for such a repercussion of Freire's work. So I pay a tribute to him, bringing his idea of a more balanced planetary conviviality. Conviviality, in Illich's thinking, was a means of non-alienated, of promoting non-alienated, purposeful actions on behalf of mankind and of the environment. This was put together in the 1970s. And this is still a concept that we started, we no longer revisit with, I think, the attention it should deserve. But I'll move forward to my conclusion. As a way of finishing up this initial provocation, I propose here that innumerable initiatives, such as the ICTM 2021 Dialogue Series, seem to demonstrate that to the extent possible, scholars and their diverse collaborations around the world have given already their contribution to the decolonization of music and dance studies. They all have problematized the legitimation of dominance and oppression on behalf of an equal and often unlimited resource accumulation, as well as the consequential institutionalization of this dominance and oppression in music and dance curricula, in focal public policy, and in the public perception of how the world diversity relates to histories that may be rather distinct and particular, but at times intersected and conditioned by overarching factors, which allow meaningful generalization. One big question to me remains open, though, are we fundamentally decolonizing and transforming music and dance studies under new premises, or just reforming this broad field of study under the same unequal and oppressive conditioning premise? My own tentative answer is that we shall proceed to pursue these overarching cross-cutting issues with the same intensity that we have recently contemplated the particular histories that affect and are equally crucial to our field. So I will finish here. Thank you very much.
Obrigada, Samuel. Thank you. And in just a moment, I'm going to ask Jean Kidula to open her mic as I will introduce her. But if I may just say, I'm thrilled that in these discussions, we are hearing new questions. It was always the vision of the dialogues that it was a beginning of dialogues important in our field. So I'm thrilled, and I'm sure that many of you are, that the reviewers are offering us the insights and questions about this work. So thank you again for that. Now, the next reviewer is Jean Kidula. Jean Goya Kidula is professor of music, ethnomusicology at the Hugh Hodgson School of Music, University of Georgia. Her research at Georgia in the United States, her research has centered on religious and ritual musics of Africa and its diaspora, with specific foci on Eastern Africa and Kenya in particular. Jean also investigates and problematizes music curricular offerings in African and US academies. Jean.
Thanks, Masha. I hope you can all hear me. Hello?
Hello, you sound good.
Thank you. I feel very, very honored to be invited to address this forum. I'm just really, really excited about the dialogues and all that has happened with them. Let me just express my sincere gratitude and congratulations to Sui, Beng, Tan, and Masha for steering, managing, and collating the process and the product of this first dialogue. Thank you, thank you, thank you so, so much. You have done amazing work. One of the most exciting things for me about ICTM is that the organization provides opportunity to dialogue across and around the world. So from the comments that Sui, Beng, and Masha have given this morning, I am excited. Well, it's morning here. I'm excited that the dialogues will continue. But just for this morning, one of my responses to the dialogue is just to provide some vignettes for reflection. My undergraduate years occurred towards the end of the second decade of post-political independence in Kenya in the early 1980s. Most of the rhetoric from my lecturers and professors was anti-colonial. However, there was already by then a novelist, playwright, and radical literary critic called Ngugi wa Thiong'o, who was speaking and demonstrating decolonization as we understand it in its definition over time. We were among the first students to read his texts, such as Weep Not Child or The River Between, in our literature classes in high school. So by the time we arrived at the university, we had already begun to witness his shift towards decolonization, such as writing novels and plays in Kikuyu language, as well as his theater collaborations with community members, rather than assembling true actors, quote unquote, true actors, trained in Western aesthetics of acting and stage production. This is in the late 1970s into the early 1980s. So he already understood and therefore invoked indigenous dramaturgy as both proactive and reactive agency to the continuing practice of coloniality, because although Kenya was independent, the issue of coloniality was still very, very present. In a predictable response by the Kenyan government, he was imprisoned, stripped of his professorial duties at the University of Nairobi, and eventually went into exile. His text that directly speaks to the theme of these dialogues, Decolonizing the Mind, was published in 1981, and it was mostly curated during his imprisonment years. While literature and theater and drama moved forward in the decolonization project, music and dance seemed to have been left behind or were extremely subtle in the ways they approached the decolonization and very rarely celebrated the work that they did. And this is one of the things that I found interesting about the dialogues. How do we celebrate the ways that we have decolonized rather than just harping on the idea of exclusion and marginalization? My second vignette, in a recent conversation after the showing of his film called Trouble Sleep that was shot in Abidjan, Nigeria, Congolese musician and filmmaker Alain Kasanda stated that the final product became about what happens on the road, and that process led to encounters of different kinds. One of the scenes that he had in his film was an aerial view of the neighborhood where he lived. It showed what one would think of as a slum. In Kasanda's response to a question that seemed to suggest that the scene showed a not so savory view of the city, he said, "It is beautiful." It was not the look of an Asian or European city, reflecting the aesthetics and tastes of Europe or Asia as models of construction. What began as a response to marginalization due to new social, political, and economic constructs accelerated and firmed by colonialism had become a way of being in the new urban world. Of course, it was troubled, but it also spoke to an aesthetic that was constructed and affirmed in the post-colony that enabled and facilitated survival in the new world order. It was not just about survival. It had become a way of being. If I were to make an analogy with what is celebrated as the largest slum of Africa called Kibera in Nairobi, there is resistance every time attempts are made to relocate the people to live in different kinds of construction that befit Eurogenic or so-called modern ways of demonstrating affluence. It is like people have learned, this is how we live in this order, and we want to live this way. But they're rarely celebrated for that kind of stance that they take. I use these two vignettes to speak to the fact that music and dance have kind of arrived, at least in these international forums, at dialogic discourses about decolonization. That does not mean that decolonization was not occurring. This was very, very evident in the dialogues. There was ample evidence in the different presentations and discussions that people on the ground, whether we study them or not, have been musicking in ways that chipped away at coloniality, especially if one looks at that concept through the definitions and arguments of Argentinian-born philosopher and semiotician Walter Mignolo. It has been gratifying to observe that scholars are not longer just going in to observe, report, and suggest new solutions. They have been proactive listeners and actors, aware that they are implicated in the control of knowledge and its subsequent dissemination in terms of policy formation and other labor. They have been scholars who have been encouraging and highlighting the voices and work of those they work with, collaborating, being part of the process, whether they are insiders or outsiders to their scholarly interests and projects. So while I struggle with the use of the term decolonization because of its possible implications of coming from a negative space, I also recognize it's way more positive than anti-colonialism. I hope we also find more positive terms to describe this very important work. And that's one of the things that I hope the dialogues will start to have people think through. What are ways that we can move forward in the language we use to describe what has been done? The ways that different populations and institutions have worked with the hand that was dealt them through the colonial and modernization European project that appended and disrupted ways of living. I know we cannot go back to the way things were. We cannot. So I applaud the way the dialogues enabled an exchange of ideas so that although sometimes it would appear that some of the discussions explored local, national, or regional issues, the idea that this was a subject that resonated all over the world allows for us to see that this is a big problem and that we can learn from one another and find solutions maybe in another region that would benefit us who are from a different region. As a curriculum developer, I often ruminate on what is emphasized in music education circles. There were groups in this dialogue who are concerned about what is taught and what is learned in institutions. I will just focus on one of those things. The idea of literacy as a prime object in music education has, for the most part, leaned towards the continued privileging of Western notational systems as a marker and indicator of literacy in institutions of learning at any level. What was really exciting for me as I listened to different dialogues, whether in real time or as they were posted online, was the work of educators and other thinkers that worked in particular region who were also brought to the table that may not necessarily have been on the tables of other regions. Paulo Freire has already been mentioned by Samuel as one of those thinkers that was in many different forums, so it's an interesting thing. The ways that decolonization of curricula have been approached in different continents was also worth reflecting about. So while music literacy is a trope that is emphasized in music education, discussions about how these symbols are interpreted using local musicings that lend a different articulation may be an area that needs to be explored beyond the usual complaints about the shortcomings of that system that then complicates how musics from elsewhere are complicated and seen as being very complex to study, to moving towards a celebration of how these systems have birthed innovative performance strategies and expanded ways that people have expressed themselves despite being pushed into a certain way of representation. This always makes me get very, very emotional because I know that music educators sometimes feel stuck, that we go to school and we need to teach people how to read and write. That was the colonial project. We have to rethink, what are we doing in the school and what are we thinking? And then beyond that, when we have taught what we have been dealt, how do people take what it is that they have been dealt and then turn it into something that makes for an even more interesting and innovative practice? That is what I find exciting about music and dance, that we turn things around in that way. To come back to the vignettes at the beginning of my comments, ideas of decolonization have been vibrant in other artistic fields where music is highly implicated. Human beings as creatives in music and dance have not just responded or reacted against marginalization and innovation within and beyond the systems. We can actually document ways, like in future dialogues, about how people have used these systems of marginalization to lift themselves to places where those who marginalize them come back to study them in order to become even more innovative in their own fields, which in itself is also acts of power, which colonialism and decolonialism address. So I hope the next dialogue will also include these acts, these proactive rather than reactive processes that have been put on the table by people that we study and we ourselves, what we do as ourselves, not just as reactive, but as proactive and innovative. I think I better stop there because I can go on for another 20 minutes talking about that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jean. Yeah, I feel very strongly with you because I think we both of us come from colonial nations, yeah, and we were dominated by the British, so we still follow the British ways the British way of teaching music and learning music and the vocabularies of the British, yeah. But I think that it's a good idea, if we have a continuation of this dialogue to actually document how people challenge coloniality in their own ways, yeah. Because we have been doing this, since we got independent, yeah. So thank you very much. I would like to introduce our next speaker, Naila Ceribašić. Is a scholarly advisor in the Institute of Ethnology and Folklore Research and professor of ethnomusicology at the University of Zagreb. Her research is ethnographically based in Croatia and neighboring countries and thematically ranges from folklore festivals to heritage production to gender and minority studies, and most recently, the record industry. In ICTM, she serves as a member of the executive board and chair of its committee on ethics. Naila?
Thank you, Suibeng. Good afternoon to everyone. And first of all, I want to echo previous speakers in congratulating and expressing my great gratitude to all of you involved in the series. Contributors and to editors and organizers of this, really groundbreaking, the most important project for the last couple of years. To position myself, I grew up in former Yugoslavia, which has never been a colony in the formal sense. Geopolitically, it tried to play in between Eastern and Western Bloc, and through its strong involvement in the non-aligned movement, it supported decolonial and anti-imperial struggles in other parts of the world. probably due to such a given, I do not feel I should comment on elements of ICTM dialogues that directly address colonial and post-colonial social and political context, as Jean does and some previous speakers. But I may propose a few comments regarding the communication between different traditions of music and dance studies, the way how to improve dialogue between them, and develop new forms of knowledge production following actually. It is nice that this session today is full of suggestions, ideas, recommendations of how to proceed. And in that, it seems I'm going to be the most traditional one in proposing like what next steps could be. So several years ago, I got interested in the subject of decoloniality, prompted precisely by a lack of communication, intelligibility, and unequal power relations between different traditions of ethnomusicology, especially between what I then called mainstream and fringe or local ethnomusicologies, that is between center and peripheries, following the vocabulary of ICTM dialogues, and especially in terms of who reads whom and refers to whom in academic writings worldwide. Then I proposed a concept of going pidgin ethnomusicology. Now I would say going pidgin music and dance studies, taking into account the linguocentric predicament of the discipline, the problem of translation, not only linguistic, but musical, cultural, and conceptual translation from one scholarly tradition into another, as well as taking into account English as, to me, realistically speaking, the only possible common language in international communication, an unquestionable lingua franca, as it should be. And I'm aware that in that I'm not in line with some previous speakers, which in my opinion, that English as lingua franca needs to allow for its pidginization in two connected ways in terms of allowing its non-idiomatic writing and rewriting. And I think the dialogues and these resulting publications are really rich resource in terms of thinking about this component of pidginization of English. And on the other hand, in terms of treating the standard English as a variant, that is, as one variant of English. The project and publication of ICTM Dialogues does much more than that, through engaging contributors who both personally and as regards the subjects they deal with, decenter power hierarchies and dichotomies of researcher and research, scholar and performer. I think that this artistic research is also a significant contribution of the whole project and the publication of theory and practice, center and periphery, global north and south. This publication also does this through its rich, very rich multimedia format, which represents an important alternative to classical text-based publication. This is absolutely one of the strong points of this publication. However, as an ICTM soul or ICTM fellow, I'm interested in how to improve communication still further. And therefore, I would yet again propose a concept of ethnomusicologicality, referring to mutually knowledgeable dialogue between different scholarly traditions. That is a development of a fluency in two or more ethnomusicologies, which can induce moments of subject shift, as Jeff Titon would say, moments of acquiring knowledge by figuratively stepping outside oneself to view the world with oneself in it, thus helping part towards understanding, similarly as in the case of B musicality, the concept that we are familiar with. While this publication does give voice to traditions that have historically been underrepresented in ICTM meetings and publications, as a further step, I would propose to think about more classical publication, and here I definitely depart from previous speakers. So to think about more classical publication and, say, ethnography and theorization of shadows, not shadows in the field, but shadows between different systems of music and dance studies worldwide, a project which may help to possess scholarly categories, theories, methods, and tools of their secure and allegedly natural habitats. For instance, I imagine a compendium on keywords in ethnomusicology and ethnochoreology with entries encompassing globally spread keywords such as fieldwork or ethnography, as well as regionally important keyword, and each keyword written through close collaboration among a group of scholars, group of researchers, better say, positioned differently regarding the boundaries that the project of ICTM Dialogues aims to overcome. To my mind, it would be an alternative, a significant alternative to the customary ways such globally accessible English language publications are created nowadays, which perpetuate the center-periphery divide. And finally, let me to mention what is obvious, that this publication confirms as unquestionable some ethical principles, such as horizontal collaboration with knowledge holders, responsibility towards social justice, equity, inclusivity, and human rights, and decolonization of teaching methodologies. These ideas, of course, are not new. They have been with us for a long time, especially in the field of applied ethnomusicology. But the persuasiveness and persistence with which they are spread throughout the publication reduce the space for deviation from these ethical principles, that is actually principles being turned into standards of action. And in that sense, I think it is truly transformative project and resulting publication to follow Samuel's point in his reflection. Thank you.
I must say it's very humbling and a great honor to have such strong affirmations of this work. I'm sure that all of the contributors feel that as well. Thank you very much for those wonderful words from all the reviewers. And it's my pleasure now to introduce the last of our reviewers before we open the session up for some comments and questions. So thank you again, Naila, for that. Anthony Seeger is an ethnomusicologist, an archivist, a record producer, and musician. He has taught in Museo Nacional at the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro, Indiana University, and UCLA. He's the founding curator-director of Smithsonian Folkways Recordings at the Smithsonian Institution. Tony has served as the president of the Society for Ethnomusicology, as well as the president and later the secretary general of the ICTM. And he has been especially active in the Applied Ethnomusicology Study Group. Tony.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Can you hear me? Yes, Good.
Yes, we can.
Well, I'm the last speaker, and therefore I'm going to bring our attention back to this publication and this series, because I think my colleagues have given wonderful suggestions for where to move in the future. But this is a celebration and launch of a lot of hard work of something that's already, to a certain extent, in its first edition, over. And so it was a tremendous project to do. I think it was in an era of real rethinking what life was all about for many of us because of COVID. It gave us something to think about. And I think it's remarkable that as many interesting things were actually done. I've watched many of them and been deeply impressed by the decentering of ethnomusicology, by having so many different people from different places speak. I also think the book, the publication, the online print publication, whatever we want to call it, whatever we can look at and jump around in, that's really critical, because the presentations don't give you the bibliography at the end. I think it's really important for us as scholars to always give people, when we're making public presentations accessible to the public, to always give them a way to get beyond what it is that they're looking at. Always help them find resources that are beyond a particular example, because I think that brings citizens into the debates and also able to get the rest of the bibliography from the few publications that are listed. So I was really happy to see that. I was really happy to see reflections by the participants on what they've done. They're very brief and they're beautifully laid out. Thank you so much. The photographs are great, but they're really critical. I think this project, just as a series of recordings, would not be anything like the project as it is going to be now that this part has been launched. Second, I really like the map. I like maps, and I think it's really important as you expand that map to see some of the sessions come from different places, because there are several people in different places in them, and also shows you the places on the map where we don't have anything yet, and might give us some ideas about there are ways of thinking and ways of being that we haven't yet begun to tap, and it may simply be because we don't know who's there. In addition, I really appreciate the quality of the project. Anybody who stumbles across this, who comes to it and sees the beautiful layout and the pictures, will see that this is a very serious, but also not heavily academic publication, and that can take them to places they hadn't imagined being able to go, and that might give them the interest in watching the videos. So I'm not going to speak any longer because I know people have questions, but I do have a bit of a song. I just did it 5 minutes before, so it's going to be hard. I picked this melody, which is a labor anthem. It's called Solidarity Forever, which is something I hope that we also all share as members of the ICTM and people watching this. But it also has lots of beats so that I can get lots of words into it. My apologies for not being able to read my handwriting. It goes like this. In the grip of COVID, our lives were all changed. The continued effects of colonialism and racism were once again clearly displayed. With hard work and dedication, schedules were rearranged and the dialogues came to be. Thank you, Tansui Beng. Thank you, Marshall Schuski. Thank you, all participants, for the dialogue came to be. So thanks to everybody. Thanks to my colleagues who gave such interesting comments, and thanks to all of you who participated in this. And I hope some of you are listening and can pass the song along. But thank you. That's all.
Tony, thank you so much. And if I can see through my tears, I'll just remind myself that in a few minutes we'll open up to comments. And I know that Razia has to leave soon, so we'll invite her to speak for a moment first. But I just want to say that song reminded us too of the joy in all of this, and the connectedness and the great and the feelingfulness of this for all of us. So thank you to all of your viewers for your comments and for your questions that will continue to be part of the continuing, whatever the projects might be that are coming out of the dialogues. I'm not allowed to say anything about that further, but there are things developing for sure. So thank you for your interest in that as well. And at this time, we have, I guess, about 40 minutes left, and we must end on time. That's part of what we've committed to do here, because everyone around the world has different things to do, including sleep afterward. And so we'll keep to our time. And welcome questions and comments. And I'm hoping that people might raise their hands, the icon that is on the Zoom function itself, so that we can be sure to see and hear from everyone. But as I mentioned earlier, Razia needs to leave, she said, so she's asked for the floor at the first. Razia.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, dear Subeng, dear Masha. Thank you so much for a wonderful song, Tony. That was really something outstanding. But I would like to say that we are very happy to be able to contribute to the project Dialogues Decolonization. Thanks for giving us a chance. Thank you for publishing our 4 video presentations, and our big congratulations on the successful delivery of the online ICTM Dialogues program. All 4 of us were lucky to be able to share our research observation on 30 years of the post-Soviet era. But now the time changed, the era changed. However, and for all of us who were born and bred in the former USSR, the world turned upside down on the 24th February 2022. From this current political and social tragedy that is the Russian war in Ukraine, we understand that the post-Soviet time has ended and the decolonization period of the Russian Empire is over. Centuries-long Russian imperial domination seen through shared worker movements, revolution, industrialization, and war has now manifested itself through the authoritarian government of the colonialist Russian state. What has the war in Ukraine brought us? Unfortunately, the current catastrophe that happened due to the Russian colonial as well as an imperial power has shown that war stops all research projects. We cannot freely collaborate now with our colleagues as we used to do before the war, with major online social media and social networking services having been blocked. The war also affects all our subjects of research, themes and projects, for example, as musicians and performers have stopped touring. Festivals like, for example, the Eurovision Song Contest for 2023 was scheduled for Ukraine, has been relocated to the Liverpool, United Kingdom. And the educational processes stand still in the war zones of Ukraine. My personal contact was planning to be in Crimean Tatar zones, on music of Crimean Tatars, and I can't get there now for obvious reasons, so it stops. However, new art reflecting on the current Ukraine war has been developed, bringing to life new songs of protest, new military anthems, etc. We still all very much hope the war in Ukraine will be over soon. However, as the post-Soviet time comes to a close, we scholars need to adjust to the new political situation. We need to reflect on the current cultural changes and face new challenges. So we do appreciate the continuation of the ICTM project dialogue, and we hope to be able to share the chronology of the music development. As we all know, history needs to be recorded. We are happy that your ICTM Dialogues project has given us the chance to share our records on post-Soviet cultural developments. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Razia. And would anyone else like to share comments or questions? But thank you for Razia for helping ground us and connect us with events going on in the world today that are so sharply impacting the work that we're doing in our relationships in this field. Thank you. Salwa.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is really a very special moment, and I'm just delighted that this publication came through, and really want to reiterate my congratulations to Sui Beng and Marcia and all of those who participated. And also many thanks to the wonderful comments, very, very inspiring. And of course, I know that there are projects in the preparation. That's excellent. You know, this should really propel us forward. There is one thing that I think would be extremely timely, because if we are talking about decolonizing music and dance research, we are thinking about the future. It is crucial for us to think about education, music and dance education. And in particular, the words of Jean Kidula resonated very much with me. I also grew up in colonial Egypt. I went to an English school. I spoke English from a very early age. So Sui Beng and I share also this colonial past. And I went also to an English mission church. So I know all about this. It's part of my background. On the other hand, and again, Razia's words also resonated very much with me, as all what has been said today. I also witnessed the Soviet influence in Egypt in my conservatory education in the 60s, where we had Soviet specialists from the Soviet Union. My father spent time in the Soviet Union as a composer and as a composition teacher. So and so I think that focusing and getting different perspectives on music education, how music is taught, how music and dance are taught, are transmitted, because in so many places, the same educational system that was implanted during colonial times is still in existence, and the emphasis on writing, as Sui Beng said, is still there. And what is taught in schools in places like Cairo or like Algiers is actually Western music education, you know, and then you learn the local tradition by rote or something like that. So I think that we need this kind of reflection, we need this kind of debate, and perhaps for serving the future, this would be also one more way to go. That's just a suggestion, and I'm sure there are many other paths as well. But what I mostly want to say is really a big, huge thank you.
Thank you so much, Salva. And just a note to say that we will transcribe the comments and discussion here so that we can take all of your thoughts into further consideration, as we move forward with the next phases of this project. But I think we'll find a way to share that as well in case others would like to make reference. I think the next hand up is Afor Paul Nto.
Okay. Thanks very much. I'm honored to be among these very, very great people. I looked at everyone. I may be the youngest. I don't know. So I've gone through everything, and being a student of music and looking at what has been said and shared, it brings me to one point. Like, I've heard talks about Ukraine and all that, and growing up in colonial Egypt, just like Sawa, Castello just said, and others too. So I too come from Cameroon, and there's this issue. I recently was working on an abstract with my supervisor, and we were actually, I cannot travel to my village to get information because of the crisis going on now, like there's serious fighting. So you can't travel. But this platform gives a voice. It gives a voice to share insights into some of these things. So it's just amazing to see how far this ICTM has gone to bring to light certain realities. Like now, I see that other people face the same challenges I face. And looking at this now is like an inspiration that work can still be done, even in times of crisis. So everything I got from here today is more of an inspiration, telling me that work can still be done in spite of the situation that's on ground. And also looking at what's going on as an aspiring scholar, I look at even the song that was just sung here, Thank You, Thank You. I see the simplicity in which, let me get to this. Yeah, Anthony Seeger, I see the simplicity in which he used to complicate his idea and sing. You know, it's just inspiring for me. So thank you very much for the work you have done. And I would really like to be part of this more and more and more often. Like, it's just inspirational. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your experiences there and how this is important to you. And welcome to the conversation. And we'll continue this together, indeed.
Yeah.
Catherine, and then Maria Agatha.
Hello, everybody, and it's wonderful to be here and to be sharing this great moment with you. And congratulations to all involved, particularly Suibing and Marcia, a really wonderful, groundbreaking production and publication. And thank you for making it available online to all of us and for free. So I suppose, again, my own positioning is, again, post-colonial, 800 years of colonization in Ireland, and growing up, feeling in some ways coming from a tradition of music and dance on the ground, which was part of a tradition I inherited, pre-revival or anything like that, and then learning a classical music tradition and embodying the two traditions, and again, an English language inheritance, growing up with English language, but equally having the Irish language, and always trying to, I suppose in some ways, trying to contextualize appropriateness of the different knowledge that you held for different contexts. And again, I suppose, following on what Salwa was saying, the notion of our responsibility and the challenges that we have within third level education or in any educational institution that we have. What knowledge do we consider to be of value, and what knowledge do we consider to be important to be transmitted and to be shared with students? And that notion of literacy, the notion of orality, and again, my own experience of the two. My orality was my father, always learning by ear, always variation, always improvisation, never writing it down. In actual fact, I started out in classical music, hating notation, because I felt initially notation for me was a trap. I felt I had to follow notes, and it didn't give me freedom. I had to learn, as I learned classical music, I had to follow the notes with Mozart and, Beethoven, and sometimes even playing Mozart and Beethoven, I might improvise in the middle of it. And my husband would say to me, it's sounding a bit Irish, because I might decide not doing any exams. I could actually put myself into the music, again, showing maybe that, there are parts of me that is maybe in confusion at times, because there's the Irish part of me and there's the part that came from the colonial inheritance in Ireland. And that notion of when we teach, what do we teach and how do we teach it, and what is the language? And it comes back to language as well. What is the language that we use to teach? And again, that is very much implicated in what we inherit. and also the aesthetic that we teach. Because in the aesthetic systems, even in my own case, I inherited different aesthetic systems, different value systems. And again, I think we owe to students to pass on the differences, of those aesthetic systems. So that is just saying that your publication resonates so much with me. I did contemplate on putting together an Irish round table for it, but I think we'll wait for the second or the third dialogues. So, but thank you very much for giving the opportunity to so many people around the world to participate in the dialogues, and we've learned so much from them. Thank you.
We have learned with and from one another so much and continue to do so. Thank you, Catherine. Maria Agatha.
Hello, everybody. Let me join everybody in thanking Swibeng and Sha for this great achievement. And I'm very happy that Nigeria was also part of this dialogue. But what I want to reiterate is, I'm not going to try to repeat what every other person have said. As all of us know, Nigeria also is a colonized state. I use the word is because from everything that happened and is happening in the country, you could see a very strong Western hand still having a grip on the country. But what I want to thank Swibeng and Masha for is that whilst we were preparing and participating in this dialogue, it started giving us avenues to think differently, particularly the way we teach music in our schools and what we teach as music in our schools. And we came up with this whole idea, or rather what was very evident was this colonial mentality, which has a very strong grip and even in our educational system, and needs to be decolonized. But how do you go about decolonizing the mentality of people that have been so held bound in one position for so many years? It is something that, the educational system in Nigeria must take note of. We say it very often. I tell you, we say it, everybody knows it, everybody says it, yet when the curriculum is made, it is the same old thing. So I guess this avenue of the dialogues is something that is going to continue to be very helpful in helping scholars, particularly scholars from Nigeria, in rethinking and trying to implement as much as possible, even if we might not be able to do it from the curriculum, national curriculum point of view. Because unfortunately, when the curriculum for the schools are made, most often than not, those who are professionals and are supposed to be part of that curriculum building are not there, or they are not invited to be part of it. So we keep recycling the same things. Again, thank you very much. And I just wanted us to also remember that there is this whole mentality that needs to be decolonized. Thank you, Swibeng. Thank you, Masha.
Thank you, Sister Maria Agatha. We have some time yet for a few more questions. Someone might like to contribute. Another comment, an observation, a question? Yes, Swibeng.
While we are waiting for the others to think about the questions, I'd like to go back to Samuel's question about, are we reforming or are we transforming ethnomusicology? I think for me, if people on the ground are actually doing a lot of things, to decolonize the music curriculum, or to decolonize their way of thinking, or decolonize the study of music. But it is actually not documented, as Jean says, and we just do not know about it. So I think that if we give people the voice to speak, and if we give ordinary people who are struggling on the ground a chance to speak, then we are actually transforming ethnomusicology. Don't you think so? Samuel.
Well, I I also agree with you, of course. That's what I've been trying to do my entire career, I should say, and even before that. But what I'm trying to bring forward is another kind of question. Can we really think that all kinds of oppression are the same? Is there any sort of central pressure, so to speak, that we should be dealing with? Are we dealing with it, if there is one? These are the kinds of questions I think we should think over about further, because I'm not satisfied with my own answers, So, for instance, there is a whole discussion, a whole debate in world terms about the enactment of social participation. Situations in which social participation is being enacted and not really taking place.
Yeah.
And so this is sort of absorbed by the World Bank, by international agencies, which are not interested, of course, in democratic way of putting together the global public sphere, as Nancy Fraser puts it. And I think we should be thinking about those large issues. If we are trying to get together in sort of a world dialogue and present some alternative forms and of knowledge production, of cosmologies and so on, that could sort of counteract these forms of oppression and counteract the ways in which the music and dance curricula somehow conform those forms of oppression as well.
Thank you, Samuel and Soibeng. It's my understanding that Jacob Rekadal had his hand up around the time Soibeng did. I'm sorry, there are multiple screens here. Jacob, I'm sorry I missed that. Would you like to open your mic and share your comment or your question? And then Beatriz?
Sure, no problem. For some reason, I couldn't get the digital hand to go up, so I used my physical hand. I just wanted to reiterate the huge and heartfelt thanks to Marcia and Soibeng, who, in addition to this immense work, were extremely patient with some of our late emails and little hitches in the process of preparation and revision. I want to thank you so much for your cordiality with that, and also express from the point of view of someone who coordinated one of the panels how impressive this final product is. I didn't quite have the idea of where you're going to take this. When it was proposed, we understood that there'd be a series of kind of taking a world conference online or something like that. And that's great. And let's participate and take advantage of the opportunity to spread things out geographically and culturally, because we would be online. But this publication format has just showed that there was a whole deeper plan to give this a life post presentation that's really just impressive and a great example. And I think the debate that Samuel has kind of put on the table here is very important and can't be resolved here, but is definitely where we have to be discussing things. But ICTM has definitely shown that actions speak louder than words. And here in Chile, we were so touched that Svanibor came to our study group meeting a few weeks ago. I mean, that just shows the concern, the willingness to spend time and resources to actually physically go to places that we're trying to know better and to represent. And so just a congratulations and a thanks with those words. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jacob, and to all of your group that contributed to the publication as well. There has been a lot going on for all of us in these last couple of years while this was all coming together in its various phases. And it's been really wonderful, as Soibeng and I mentioned earlier, the care with which we were all engaging with one another, that has been really sustaining. And I think others made reference to this as well. Thank you. And I think we have time. If the next three speakers, I see 3 hands up, could keep things very, very short, then there will be time for Soibeng to wrap up in about a minute before we have to end on time as we promised. So asking the next 3 speakers, all of the hands were up already, to keep things brief. Beatrice, you are first.
Hello. Thank you, everyone. It's a bit early here, so I'm not able to turn on my camera for today, but thanks for this event and the organization of the publication. I just have some comments listening to all of you, and the way we are kind of reviewing what has been done through the dialogues. I think there's one aspect of this, no, maybe more than one, but one that I feel very close to is the way the dialogues allowed for many early career scholars to participate, and the way it allowed also for the representation of dance scholars, which was it was mentioned, but I still want to address this, because I think that there is a danger if we keep studying decolonizing or any analysis of power structures only as a topic of study, right? And I think that there is a lot also in looking at the life challenges of the scholars who are dealing with this. And in that regard, many of the dance scholars who participated in the dialogues are, we are running into this also oppressive dynamics of academia itself. And in between these struggles, there is the fact that many of us work in non-academic institutions. So we work for NGOs, and then many projects that are actually questioning pedagogies and engaged research are happening also outside of academia. And I wondered, thinking on looking forward, thinking on how can, the dialogues can also refer to all this work. And thank you so much for this space.
Thank you, Beatrice. Thank you. If I may, and I Mfanu Fikile Motau, if I pronounced your name correctly, I hope. Please open your mic and share with us your insight.
Too much. Thank you very much for allowing us to be part of this progressive dialogue, especially here in South Africa, where I come from, in a town called Mamelodi. We have our own kind of jazz, which is called Malombo jazz, and is inspired by a traditional and spiritual African music and dance. This kind of music is music which is used by African doctors, healers, and the music is invented by the late Dr. Philip Dabane. And I'm saying this because we view Malombo music as a basis to decolonize African music. Thank you.
Thank you very much, And it's good to hear your voice. There's a bit of static, but I think we heard your comment in entirety. I think we all understood. And our last question, I think we'll take from Bhai Baldeep Singh, and then I'll turn this over to Sui Beng for some comments to wrap up this wonderful session. Thank you.
Hi, thank you very much for this, and compliments again for the upcoming publication. Professor Francesca Cassio had informed me that it is on, so artists, really congratulations to everyone concerned. Listening to Razia Sultanova's comment about the current issue, which is very, very sad, the kind of destruction that is happening. Before I left my flying career, I was a student of defense studies. So those senses, I guess, were sort of prompted on. But my note today, or question today, or rather my prayer, would be to look at the colonization of religion, or by religion. The idea that if you are not believing in this God or that God or my God, you're not going to heaven. In Punjab, for example, in northwest India, which is predominantly a Sikh space, the birthplace of the Sikh path. The conversions by the Christian missionaries has suddenly become very controversial, like the people from the underserved communities, namely the scheduled tribes and castes. They are being converted, and I went in February to do some research, and I learned that about 3,500 rupees, which is roughly maybe $50 a month, is given to the head of a family in a village who converts to whatever brand of Christianity, for example, is being done, promise a free education until class 12, and then half the fees for college. So that how I was looking that instead of the music they've been singing for centuries, if not thousands of years, the music is also changing. And it sort of woke me up to the idea of how colonization is not just a political idea. It's not just an imperial idea. It is also not merely, well, it is certainly not a racial idea, because skin color cannot be given to somebody for grabs. But as a person who's a conservator, who's from direct descendant of the family which never got uncolonized, lost all the hundreds of thousands of acres of lands and privileges, my ancestors never shook hands with the British when they were here. But what was the result? The original exegetical attendance survived. The original music of the gurus survived. So I'm seeing, sadly, the erasure, yes, the coming of one form of music, but then the death of another form of music, languages, even dialects. So it will be, the kind of sensitivity and sensibility that I've seen with my couple of participations. I would be very interested to participate if such a dialogue could happen. And I'm thankful to Mary Agathe Oza, who's mentioned that there is something which is already happening at the Vatican. I've shared my email ID with her. Thank you very much, and compliments once again.
Thank you so much. And to all of the speakers, the reviewers, and to all of you for listening and for contributing further to the dialogues today with your questions and your comments. And now, Sui Beng, if I could turn it over to you for the final words before we wrap up for today.
Yeah. So all things must come to an end. I think Marsha and I are very touched with all your kind words and appreciation for the work that we have done. But we could not have done this without the participation from all the presenters and from ICTM. So special thanks to Svanibor, Beverley, Samuel, Naila, Jean, and Tony, who took time off from their busy schedules to be with us today. and to share their insightful thoughts with us, as well as posing critical questions to think about and the way forward. We surely will think about how to answer some of these questions if in the next round. Yeah. Thank you to all the presenters for participating and for joining us in the celebration and launch of this digital publication, and for your warm reflections. We also thank Carlos for handling the technical aspects so efficiently, and to Eric for assisting him from Canada. The ICTM Dialogues Committee will discuss the issues raised today and, what to do next year. But at the moment, we will continue this important work by compiling a list of terminologies that were previously not accepted by international music journals and book publishers, with the hope of expanding what will be accepted and published in the future. We will be contacting all of you for your help. Marcia and I also look forward to further collaborations and to continue the dialogue about decoloniality at the next World Conference in Ghana in 2023. And there will be a special theme on decoloniality in Ghana. So please share this digital publication and contributions with your students and with your colleagues. And I'd like to thank all of y'all again. And goodbye. Thank you very much. Yeah.